What else do we want on earth? It's like finding a perpetual gold mine, if gold is really as important as this. My name is Ladi Ojas. Welcome to Skeletal Leap, a living adventure. Skeletal Leap transforms one's life into a personal heaven. Today's episode will tell you about emptying the mind via breathing energy and breathing insight with every single breath for Kundalini awakening. Breathing becomes the perception of energy with every single exhalation as chakras are opened, removing all obstacles in its way. The way from the coccyx at the pelvis to the crown at the top of the head gets fully cleared. How breathing activates Kundalini. Kundalini rises from the gut to the brain as it works through the nervous system. It does so through the spinal cord, provided the chakras are open. And this is not a one-time event. It rises every single time the breath gets almost fully exhaled in an absolutely quiet manner. There is no force that needs to be exerted at all while exhaling. This way, it keeps the flow of Kundalini, amounting to insightful intelligence, intact incessantly through the passage of time every time. Therefore, another way to think of Kundalini is life energy that is personalized as insightful intelligence. The first time Kundalini rises through a person's spine via the vagus nerve or Sushumna, it may or may not manifest as tantrums. These tantrums can take the form of one of several different reactions depending on the person's psychological and neurological disposition. Some feel this first rise as an electrifying shock from the leftover impediments along its way. Some others feel it as a sense of extreme joy never experienced before. There is a full spectrum of reactions as varied as there are persons who feel and express those reactions. Once the initial honeymoon or nightmare is over, it settles down as a conscious, creative potential in the coccyx again. One cannot take it for granted that this process will occur automatically over and over again, thereby falling back in their mechanical ways of life from before. Getting this life energy of insightful intelligence transferred to the brain with every single breath still lies firmly within the conscious domain of awareness. Therefore, one needs to keep one's chakras open as one's first nature. Once this is successfully achieved, one needs to become conscious of every single breath, no matter what one is doing. You might now wonder, won't focusing on every single breath divide our attention whenever we need to focus on something else of importance? Not at all. The focus is not on the breath, but instead on the joy of one's involvement into the action. This will ensure that our attention is focused on that very moment. In fact, it stops us from drifting into the domain of mind whose emotional emphasis is on past memories and future imaginations. This type of focus keeps us centrally fixated in the process of thinking rather than getting swayed by thoughts, which is what unconsciously disturbs our attention. For this to happen seamlessly, we don't even need to count our breaths. That will only make it as mechanical as any other meaningless rituals people employ to increase concentration, like counting beads. Concentration and attention, that is focus, are two different things altogether. Here is something really beautiful. Once the insight of energy has gotten awakened as a potential, every single extended exhalation of breath performs a miracle. It fills the head and the pelvic region simultaneously with an extreme sense of joy and passion. This joy always remains as fresh passionate and spontaneous as it was when we felt it the very first time. Imagine having a passionate joy of cosmic orgasm at the crown chakra and a sexual orgasm at the pelvis simultaneously with every single exhalation of breath forever. It quite likely occurs due to an optimum release of serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin, and endorphins in the nervous system. What else do we want on Earth? It's like finding a perpetual gold mine, if gold is really as important as this. What actually happens is that we train ourselves to adopt lightness as a personality style. And we do this while equipping ourselves with its traits, namely interest, insight, and adventure. Not even the acutest stress can pull us off track anymore. It's like utilizing the smart vagus of Stephen Porges' polyvagal theory. That is what strengthens us in the face of an otherwise sympathetic nervous system response of fight or flight. In fact, we have done something even bigger than this. We have emptied our mind along the way. And in doing so, we have become invincible. And we keep renewing the entire procedure with every single breath. We no more fear even the most imminent of threats, death. We have discovered the most artistic way to live life. Live it here and live it now. And we have learned how to do it here and now. And best of all, using clear, physical, and measurable techniques. Consciously extending exhalations a little longer than inhalations after opening all the 7 chakras does it all. And it does it well too. It's simple. It's no rocket science. As this combination of keeping chakras open while extending exhalations a little longer than inhalations becomes our first nature, the miracle happens. We no more need to keep an account of both these processes separately in a list of things to do. We just perceive its effect as a sense of non-stop passionate joy. If ever a break is perceived in that joy, we immediately need to set it right then and there. Breathing as prana. Breathing isn't just a simple exchange of gases within the lungs. It's way more than that. That's why in the ancient chakra scriptures, it has been named as prana, meaning the basic core of life energy. It's conceived as having the following 5 types of winds in the human system. Number 1, prana, located at head, lungs, and heart with an inward and downward movement, it empties the mind. Number 2, apana, located at lower abdomen with an outward and downward movement, it activates healthy digestive and reproductive systems. Number 3, udana, located at thoracic diaphragm and throat with an upward movement, it activates healthy respiratory and communication systems. Number 4, samana, located at navel with a spirally churning movement over there, it activates healthy metabolism. And number 5, vyana, located along circulatory system with outward movement, it activates healthy circulatory and nervous systems. There is also a mention of nadis, meaning channels in the body like nerves, arteries, veins, capillaries, bronchioles, and lymph canals. The main 3 among them are: number 1, ida, that controls mental processes. Number 2, pingala, that controls vital processes. And number 3, sushumna, that connects the root chakra to the crown chakra. Breathing is a biological process of moving air out from and into the lungs, thus replacing carbon dioxide with oxygen. The exchange takes place in the alveoli through diffusion as the gases are transported to and from the cells by the circulatory system. This makes cellular respiration possible, where cells extract energy from digested food through its oxidation. Carbon dioxide is generated as a waste product which then needs to be expelled out of the body through external respiration called breathing. Breathing also controls speaking, laughing, creating facial expressions, and reflexes like yawning, coughing, and sneezing. The respiratory tract has the following different parts in it to perform all these activities. Upper airways, there are nasal cavities comprising nostrils, pharynx, and larynx. And lower airways comprising trachea, mainstem bronchus, lower bronchus, segmental bronchus, bronchiole, and alveolar duct named alveolus. Three different breathing styles. There are three different breathing styles that people adopt as a lifelong habit. Number one, diaphragmatic breathing or deep breathing is done by contracting thoracic diaphragm for inhaling air inside the lungs. It's a muscle located between the thoracic and abdominal cavities. It comprises slow and deep inhalation through the nose, followed by slow and complete exhalation. Diaphragmatic breathing improves the blood flow while reducing pulse rate and blood pressure. It also relaxes the vagal nerve and optimizes the sympathetic mode of the nervous system, which is the source of a fight or flight response. It's also one of the best cures for belly fat in particular and weight loss in general. Number two, shallow breathing. Also called thoracic breathing or chest breathing, it uses intercostal muscles drawing much less air into the lungs. And number three, clavicular breathing that raises the shoulders and the collarbones while simultaneously contracting the abdomen for inhalation. Its process is a very tiring one and cannot be held for long durations of maximum air intake. One must opt for diaphragmatic breathing alone because it takes the maximum air in. It's also because diaphragmatic breathing alone can awaken Kundalini, pushing it up after all the chakras go open. During exhalation, the lungs are left with the functional residual capacity of air, which occupies a volume of 2.5 to 3 liters. An extended exhalation can reduce it further to 1 liter, not more than that. In other words, one may extend their exhalation such that the leftover air in the lungs is anywhere between this range of 1 to 2.5 or 3 liters. How diaphragmatic breathing empties the mind? How can breathing empty the mind? Emptying the mind means getting rid of all its beliefs, habits, fears, and desires. If we try to do this through conscious mental effort using our willpower, we fail miserably. This is because we are trying to kill the mind by the mind itself. Why would the mind ever commit suicide? It's happy being in control not only of our psychology but also our biology. It does so by turning our perceptions and urges mechanical. It's only possible to empty the mind using itself when it's posed with an impending emergency that it has no solution for. It stops working in such an impending scenario. Consequently, it gets forced to surrender its reign over any action that could get rid of the said scenario. Ultimately, in such a situation, the brain takes charge and performs the appropriate action to come out of that scenario. The story of my mind emptying itself and handing over the charge to my brain in an emergency. I remember a story from my life when my spirit of adventure posed a similar challenge to my mind, and my mind just resigned. But my spirit still went ahead with my brain alone and faced the challenge. My mind was absolutely emptied in the process and thus held back. It was in the year 1992 that I visited a beautiful high-altitude valley in the Himalayas named Manali. I had already booked a cottage for a month-long stay over there. We were three in our family: my wife, my 6-year-old daughter, and I. We were enjoying our stay, doing something new each day. After around 10 days, we thought of going on an unconventional trek in the valley, a trek along the untrodden side of the river Bias that flowed through the valley. Any roads that existed would be on the other side of the river from our trek. Regardless, we started our trek and kept moving along the river upstream. After around half an hour of our trek, the river got us stuck. It was taking a sharp turn there after hitting a high rock on our side of the trek. So there was no way to go further. We were a little disappointed. I looked around the hill to the side of the river. I was looking for a bridle path, hoping to climb up a little and then come down to move further along the river. That way we could have circumvented the sharp turn and climbed down to the river ahead of the sharp turn. As I was investigating the visible bridle paths, I spotted a man standing at the hilltop looking curiously toward us. I shouted, aiming my voice in his direction. "Hey! Hey!" the man shouted back from the hilltop. I explained to him in my sign language what we were up to. Seemingly a local, he immediately understood what we wanted. He threw a fleeting look along the bridle paths up the hill. Then he looked down around the river bend and then waved at us to climb up. As we started climbing up, I spotted him coming down toward us as well. That surprised me a bit. But as we climbed up a little further, I realized why he had made his way down. As we reached a nearly horizontal patch lined up with a nearly vertical rock, we found him standing up there. What a helping spirit combined with a curious involvement. He smiled, sitting atop the approximately 7 feet high rock tilted at around 105 degrees from the patch. "I had seen this rock from above, and I knew you would need my help to climb it," he said, smiling. "Thanks a lot." I felt grateful. As I looked down once from where we were standing, I found us to be exactly over the river bend, which meant that by then we had climbed a few hundred feet. The man lied down on his stomach on the horizontal patch atop the rock. From there, he hung his arms down along the slope of the rock. First, my wife held his hands, and I pushed her from behind as he pulled her up to the top. As the patch above the top was comparatively narrow, he made her sit a little away on a gentle slope. Then he came back to the rock top and lied down on his stomach, hanging his arms down again. This time, I lifted my daughter and pushed her up from behind as he pulled her up easily. He made her sit along with my wife and came back to the rock top again. As he lied down on his stomach a third time, hanging his arms down to pull me up now, he realized it wouldn't work. "Oh," he exclaimed, disappointed. By then, I too had realized that we had not accounted for this scenario. With my wife and my daughter, I was there below to push them up, but now I was alone with no one to do the same for me. The man and I looked into each other's eyes and then down at the river below, flowing with roaring ferocity. "We forgot this," I said. "Now?" he asked me. "It's risky," I said with a sigh. "Disappointing," he sighed back, dropping his head on the top of the rock. "Hey, is it really impossible?" I looked at the height and the slope of the rock. "Not exactly, but yes, almost," he opined. "Why don't we do it? I can push myself up with all my might." My adventure bug bit me further. I don't bother about myself, but you have a family along. If you aren't able to make it the very first time, we both will be down there in the river. We will be flown away by its gushing waters, not to be found even as dead bodies ever. A drowning man catches at a straw, so you'll end up pulling me down as well. He explained what all it could entail. Oh, then send them back and we will go down the way we came up from. I felt concerned about a stranger's life not to be jeopardized. But I won't feel good, he exclaimed as he looked into my eyes intently. I kept looking back into his. Okay, let's do it. Just take care to sink your push with my pull exactly at the same moment. He finally gave his verdict. Think twice before you say yes, I said. You too, came his reply. Ready? I asked. Ready? He asked. We both started counting aloud. 1, 2, 3. As we counted 3, I found myself lying along him up on the patch at the top of the rock. 2 sighs of relief from the two of us, and we smiled calmly, looking at each other's faces. I did it. In fact, my body did it. I didn't know how I had done it. It was exactly like what that middle-aged mechanic in my story in episode 19 had done. He too didn't have any clue to how he had done what he had. My wife and daughter were oblivious to what we both had come up through. My mind was just empty, and it remained so for a long while after. But habits die hard. The entire pattern comes back to the same square one once the emergency gets over. Hence, though imminent emergencies can empty our mind in a flash of a second, they aren't a permanent modus operandi. But yes, they can give us an instant glimpse of what an empty mind feels and works like. They can certainly demonstrate the superiority of any action done on our part without any doubt about it. That was what had happened in the just mentioned story, as well as in the mechanic's story mentioned in episode 19. How to empty the mind permanently. But then, how can the mind be permanently emptied? Remember the first-hand account of a first-timer in skydiving quoted before in episode 20? I repeat it here for your convenience. I was out. Everything mentally ended. Over. Started. Me. Perhaps more dead than alive. Perhaps more alive than I will ever be. Breathing just as I had been taught. Wind, wind and breath. Until wind and breath became indiscernible, became as one. And yes, almost weightless. It was true. Weightless and so surreal. There was the earth, neither coming at me, nor me at it. No up, no down, no me in the ego sense of me. Just some thoughtless consciousness. And yes, it was awesome simply to be. Or not. The sky was in my lungs, and it never once occurred to me would the parachute open. It's a perfect example of a mind having gone empty. And what a tremendous experience this was. But unfortunately, this too stays only for a maximum duration of 6 to 7 minutes. That's while the skydiver is falling free before the parachute opens. We could extend this time with the help of a virtual reality simulator without even having a real skydiving session. But for how long? We could even consider improving the quality of virtual freefall simulator as compared to a real skydiving session. That could even entail removing the decelerating effect of air with a better control on experiencing acceleration due to gravity. We could hypothesize that such a perfect simulation for a certain minimum time might empty the mind permanently as well. In fact, I'm already working on a project that proposes to testify this hypothesis under strict laboratory conditions. But we cannot wait for this hypothesis to get proved correct. We do have a surer method, though a little slower than the proposed hypothesis, at least for the time being. And that is what I have already mentioned in this episode. We can easily keep emptying our mind continuously with every single extended exhalation when all our chakras are open. From a vitalistic angle, it amounts to sending periodical surges of Kundalini from an open root chakra to an open crown chakra. From a materialistic angle, it amounts to sending periodical surges of neural communication from the gut to the brain. Whatever it might be, but it does fill the crown of the head with inexplicable joy through every single extended exhalation. Along with joy, it also embellishes the brain with newer energy and newer insights. And every surge of this inexplicable joy keeps the mind emptied for its duration, in fact, a little longer. Before it starts waning, the next surge appears with the next extended exhalation, reinforcing the mind's emptiness again. Thanks for listening to this episode of Skeletal Leap, a living adventure. In the next episode, I will tell you about skeletal meditation, emptying the mind and then keeping it empty for Kundalini awakening. Be a part of Skeletal Leap community. Subscribe to Skeletal Leap newsletter. Click on the link in the description to subscribe.